Chisel and Stone, episode 6. How are you today, Mr. Winter?
Fantastic, Sean. Great to be back on, and I really enjoyed the last show. And we've got a few juicy topics for this week, so I'm looking forward to delving into them. Yes.
Yeah, well, it's incremental progress, isn't it? And as we stand, we've done 6 episodes, and 3 of them have been demonetized for our highly inflammatory and censorious commentary, no doubt. So I just want to leave this disclaimer for people at the beginning that please watch at your own peril, because me and Craig get some pretty juicy. And yeah, we had to negotiate our way out of a copyright strike for the last one. So, you know.
It baffles me as to how this happens when I look at some other podcasts and some of the topics that they're talking about, and their the language is just off the charts. So the algorithm needs to look at others, not what we're doing. It was a bit of a surprise
the language,
to me.
the topics, the themes, the usage of material. I try to do everything above board, not make
Yeah,
it too, but it still seems to attract the eye of the algorithm, the YouTube algorithm, and I think that explains why a lot of my stuff just doesn't get out there. But for those that keep turning up, leave your questions, leave your comments. We love it. Anyway, the first episode we're going to kick off with this week is another one from Muscle Discord. And he's doing some good things over there with the interviews that he's having. And this week he had probably a unknown icon of the sport, and that was Lonnie Teeper. Do you remember Lonnie from back in the day? And what were your thoughts on Lonnie?
Oh, brilliant. Oh, I remember Lonnie very, very well. And in fact, when I think about my emceeing that I've been doing, I've emceed about 6 shows for the state IFBB contests, and so when I look at people to emulate, Bob Ciccarello's okay, only for his clothes, but Lonnie Tepper, or Teeper, for his candor and the funny nicknames he used to come up with. I think he's emceed upwards of about 300 contests.
Yeah, he's done like over 300, almost 400 shows. He was saying he was a 25-year veteran of the Arnold and Ironman shows.
Yeah.
And he was kind of well known for his bodybuilding journalism, for one. But he was like the master of coming up with the predictions and the nicknames. And we're going to put you to the mad minute pretty soon to see how many nicknames that you can get over a minute. But he made some interesting kind of observations in that whole interview that I thought was well done. And one of the first things that he mentioned was bodybuilding in his eyes was one of the hardest sports, even though he's never really been a competitor or probably even looks like he's been affiliated with the sport. But do you agree that bodybuilding is one of the hardest sports?
Oh, I personally do, because a lot of athletes do. Their training is really the key to their success, I guess. But in bodybuilding, the diet, as it turns out, is about 70% of your result. But the training is also that provides a stimulus. So you've got really quite hard training in the gym, which is quite taxing on the body. But not only that, like I say, you've got all of those meals that you've got to get away, and you've got to be in the kitchen mucking around there. Then there's the posing. There's so many aspects to the sport, really, that's got to be on point.
The variables are huge, and I think it's probably one of the only 24/7, 365-day sports there is out there. And I've always said, climbing Mount Everest can be difficult, but you can always do it on a full stomach. Whereas bodybuilding is one of the only sports you've got to do that's counterintuitive to your body's performance, and that is trying to retain as much muscle as you can while doing it on a highly restrictive caloric deprivation diet. So you're basically starving yourself to come in at your best.
Yeah, and you've got to have, your sleep's got to be on point. I mean, there's so many factors, as you say. So it is a really difficult sport, and then you're on stage for only 5 or 10 minutes, depending on the federation. After all that.
Yeah, and he also kind of likened bodybuilding to being like opera, where only the hardcore fans, they want to see the freaks, and that's kind of put bodybuilding at a little bit of an odds with the 80s and 90s fans of the sport, because they think that bodybuilding is reaching this point where it's not getting better, it's getting worse. And they also brought up the fact of which era was there famous. I think Lonnie also leans into the 90s and the 80s being well. But let's have a look at, say, how Dan and Jake are running the Olympia show. Do you think that they're doing it well, or do you think that bodybuilding is going in the wrong direction?
Well, I always like watching the Olympia, and I enjoyed watching the Olympia, live when I was in Florida last year. And the whole production is pretty spectacular. In fact, it's improved. I believe it's improved since Jake Wood's taken over. The only problem is there's a few little things like these. They've spent a lot of money on all of the backdrops with all of the fancy laser lighting and different monitors and sponsors,
Oh, that's
adverts and that sort
atrocious.
of thing.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
does detract from the physique. When we used to have the black backdrops, and there's nothing wrong with having those big screens at the side so people can look up and see that. But just directly behind the competitors, they've got to try to sort of get away from being too flashy and go back to basics there.
But not to
But
mention also the starting time for the Open Olympia.
well,
That
I was just
excuse
going to
that
go
they
on to
run.
that.
Yeah, yeah. But also, like, they also brought up the point of what do you think about them holding the Olympia in different countries again, like they used to do back in the 70s and 80s and even 90s?
Well, I mean, it is an international sport, so it's only fair that you, because I mean, I remember one time they did have the Olympia in Italy. I think it was in Britain at one point. So why not, have it in other countries? He's just got to do your research in terms of getting a good venue. But, Dan Solomon is the master of, project management, so I'm sure he could do that. And there'd be plenty of venues around the world. So, yeah, I mean, it is a truly international sport. So, yeah, I think there's a strong case for having it in other countries, and it would create a bit of interest for sure.
Do you think the $500,000 or whatever they're trying to raise the first prize purse up to, do you think that's adequate to cover what bodybuilding is in terms of its popularity these days, or do you still think it's a bit too low?
Oh, I think first prize is spot on, but what they were talking about though it was quite interesting. What about second, third, fourth, fifth? What happens there? You jack up first prize, and then there's all the other 1,000 divisions. What happens to them too? So you've got Chris Bumstead. They spoke about as the most popular bodybuilding in the world, and the prize money for him might be 50,000. I think it's only about 50 first place.
Yeah, that's atrocious.
In classic physique, and that particular division, that category, is super popular. And he's got 24 million followers on Instagram, and God knows how many million on YouTube as well. So he's doing.
It's interesting that Lonnie was saying that he was talking to Jay Cutler recently, and Jay Cutler says that Chris Bumstead is the future of the Olympia in terms of the look that really they should be chasing. And it was really funny for somebody as large as Jay was during his heyday to now switch it up, disregard all of the other open guys and say that Chris Bumstead is the future of the Olympia direction.
Yeah, that's a big call from Jay. And, I love his attitude and the way he's sort of stayed with the sport, and, he's still abreast with everything, and, he's open to changing his ideas. So good on you, Jay, for that. But I think he's right. And, we're seeing that with just the sheer numbers, aren't we? The sheer numbers entering, and even just in my local shows that I've seen, there's loads of guys wanting, and young guys, but even older guys wanting to do that classic division. So it's extremely popular, and at least they're getting on stage not looking like Michelin men. So it's good.
One of the other things that I liked were the different hypotheticals that they were proposing throughout the episode. For example, would Sean Ray beat Derek Lunsford? Now, they were inclining to that Sean possibly could beat Lunsford. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I love those.
A Sean fan.
I love the hypotheticals, and you've been doing some good hypotheticals on our show, but then they were doing them too, and I was really enjoying the whole thing. But yeah, Sean versus Derek. I'm sorry, Sean Ray from the front, sensational. Probably, well, no, he was definitely a better poser, but from the back, Derek Lunsford is crazy from the back. So the show would be one from the back there, I'm afraid. So Derek's got about 25 pounds more muscle in his posterior chain and on the back, so that would probably wrap it up for him. But from the front, Sean's magnificent, and it would be a lot tighter from the front, I guess, for sure.
Yeah, the other interesting hypothetical they talked about was Dexter versus Sean. Who was the better bodybuilder from that era? Because that's similar eras. Well, they also competed against each other numerous times.
Yeah, that's another good one.
Yeah. Who would you pick in terms of who was the better bodybuilder?
Dexter versus Sean. Yeah, boy, geez, they're both very sensitive. I hope they don't listen to what I'm about to say, but I would go with Dexter just only from the fact that Dexter had more width. Sean was quite narrow in the clavicles. Sean had fantastic muscle bellies. There's no question about that. He was a sight to behold when he first came on the scene at such a young age. But Dexter, wow, he had pretty good shoulder width, and a waist even smaller than Sean Ray's, and his quads were quite flaring, and he had quite a wide back too. Whereas Sean Ray's back wasn't wide; it was good. He had quite long lats, but he didn't have the width because of his narrow clavicles. So I'd give it to Dexter, and Dexter probably had slightly better condition than Sean too. But they both were fantastic posers, and it really good hypotheticals, aren't they? You know, I think.
Yeah. Lonnie was the master of the MCs and the hypotheticals, but he also was well known for his selection of iconic and emblematic bodybuilder nicknames over the years. And he came up with so many of the different ones that we still know even today. So I'm going to give you a challenge of 1 minute, and
Here we go.
Play along at home. And I'm going to give you as many as we can fit in the minute. So I'm going to give you the nickname, and you have to tell me the bodybuilder. And if you don't know, you can say pass.
All right. I'm under the pump here.
Starting the minute now. The Shadow.
Dorian Yates.
The Shed.
James Hollington.
The Sultan of Symmetry.
Flex Wheeler.
Big Country.
Dallas McCarver.
The Big Nasty.
Ronnie Coleman.
The Black Prince.
The Black Prince is Robbie Robinson.
The Real Deal.
Chris Cormier.
The Myth.
Sergio Oliver Sr.
Nexzilla.
Nick Zilla. Oh, that's the new guy. Rubiel.
Quadzilla.
Paul DeMeo. Wow, those quads.
Abzilla.
Ahmed Haydar.
Glutezilla.
Tommy Thorvaldson. And those glutes were crazy.
Dragon Slayer.
Rich Gaspari.
The Boston Mass.
Jose. I forgot his second name.
That's the end of that. So Jose Raymond. I'll give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You got 13 in 60 seconds. Not too bad. Not too shabby.
That was good fun.
Yeah.
There's so many good nicknames. Some are cringeworthy, but the ones that have stuck, I think, are pretty good. You know, I think what was the one I was looking at the other day that I quite liked? Oh, of course, George Farrar. We spoke about him in a previous podcast, and Lonnie called him the bulletproof bodybuilder.
Yeah.
So
there's a few obscure ones. I don't know if you can get them, but who was the Shape?
The Shape. I don't know the Shape.
Steve Reeves.
Oh yes.
The
Brilliant.
Juggernaut.
Juggernaut, yeah. Oh, that's R.I.P. to Luke Sandow. Yeah.
Correct.
Big fan of that physique. What a ripper.
The Prophecy.
Keown Pearson, I think.
No, he's the Prodigy.
Oh, the Prodigy. Oh, the Prophecy. Prophecy. I do know, but it's slipping. I've lost that one.
How about the Persian Pearl?
You've got to tell me who the Prophecy was.
The Prophecy was the Nathan Diasha, apparently.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah. True. Yeah.
How about the Persian Pearl?
The Persian Pearl. That's not Hardy Shupan, is it? No,
that's the Persian Wolf. Persian Pearl was King Kamali.
Oh yes, yeah, that's right.
And this is one I can only find a few sources that actually confirm this one, but the Haitian striation.
The Haitian striation. That's a beauty. No, don't know that one.
I remember a bodybuilder back in the 90s called Renal Janvier.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah. Because he had those his posterior chain, his glutes were like crazy at the time. So he was ahead of his time, wasn't he? For sure. Renal Janvier, what a shape. He had the aesthetics. That guy, yeah, fantastic. Yeah. I remember well.
Absolutely. Yeah, so great interview there with Lonnie Teeper, and well done to Matt from Muscle Discord. Keep them coming. But the next video that I thought we'd look at is that Jeff Nippard's legs tier video that was released a couple of weeks back. So what Jeff did with this one is he took a number of leg exercises and he graded them from either the best to the worst. He gave them different tiers. What do you think of Jeff's, content? Because we don't really talk about Jeff amongst ourselves behind the scenes. but he's one of the more science, evidence-based guys that's put out a lot of content, has a lot of followers, extremely popular. But do you delve into his stuff very much?
No, I haven't had a chance to see too much of his stuff. What about
Yeah, some
yourself?
of the key points that I picked up in Jeff's video from this one is, or he has like key factors for effective quad exercises. So he says the exercise has to have a high amount of quad tension, particularly in the stretch position. It has to feel good, so there's no knee pain and smooth resistance profile. And you've got to be able to progress the exercise simply enough to allow for progressive overload. And he also mentioned that machines and free weights can be equally effective for muscle building when the sets are pushed hard. So of some of his, super tier quad exercises, he's got the hack squat, the barbell back squat, Smith machine squat, pendulum squat. Other exercises that he also rated really highly were the front squat, the leg press, the leg extension, something called reverse Nordic, which was kind of new to me, the Bulgarian split squat. But we thought that we would break it down with our own favorite top 5 exercises that we've experienced. So what's your number one? Or give us your 5 in general.
Yeah, okay. Well, the ones that I've chosen are based on a little bit biased towards me with my knees. I've got to keep my knees in mind. And you just spoke about knee pain. So all of these are knee friendly, but still work the quads. So number one for me is Smith machine squats with the feet slightly in front of the body and not too wide apart. I find that to be fantastic. I can maintain a vertical spine and there's no shearing forces in my knees. So it was only a few years ago I couldn't do any squats at all. But now I'm back doing nice deep squats again, but it's in the Smith. So that's
no way you chose it because it was Dorian's favorite squat exercise.
Well, the funny thing is, Sean, when you've got longer legs and a shorter torso, that's the way you really need to be doing it. Otherwise, you're going to wreck your knees and hips. There's just no question. You haven't got the mechanics. And Dorian had the short torso and the longer legs, and I'm the same. So it's a real good one if you're having trouble. And then the second one I like is heavy dumbbell lunges or the Bulgarian split squats. But those walking dumbbell lunges, you've got to focus on, if you're going to be walking up and down, to make sure the back knee hits the deck to keep you sort of fairly upright. And that is a beauty. I'm sore everywhere after doing that exercise. So it just works everything. Brilliant movement. And I remember seeing yourself doing those on the bench. Remember you had your back leg on the bench?
Yeah, that was a Bulgarian split squat, though.
That's right, yeah.
I'm more of a fan of the dynamic lunge as well. The only trouble is with the dynamic lunges is you've really got to pick your times when you do that in a crowded gym, because otherwise people just love to get in the way of you doing your lunges unless they have one of those dedicated tracks like they do it, like, say, like a world gym. But most of our gyms here in WA and Perth are pretty limited. So walking lunges can almost be, a hazard to your own health and anybody else's that gets in the way at the end of the day. It's funny. Jeff Nippard didn't like the lunge. He said it wasn't as high up in the tier. What have you got up for number 3?
Yeah, okay. Well, leg extensions with a focus on peak contraction. So I've really been enjoying leg extensions the last few years. You can change your foot alignment slightly, and I really like the unilateral leg extension with just one leg at a time. But again, with that 2-3 second hold at the top. It's
one of the things that I liked about the video that I'd never noticed before, but to biomechanically optimize that movement, he suggested like sitting right back in the machine or lying almost back in it and extending out like that, which was a good tip that I've never used before. Because I always thought they just sit up further in the machine, but no, apparently not.
I'll tell you who used to do that, Sean, was Platts. Platts would lay right back. And we all know about Sir Thomas's quads, don't we? Yes. Pendulum squats. I have used pendulum squats. There's nothing over in WA, but when I go to Melbourne and check out all the shopping centre gyms there, the pendulum squat. So I'll always use it, and it is magnificent. It's great on the knees, and it really focuses on the quads. So that's another one that I like. All of these are.
We have a real paucity over here for good gyms, don't we? Like, I mean, I don't really shop around too much at some of these private gyms and what they offer, because just the urban spread in WA is so hard to navigate everything that's available. But in terms of what we've got on offer, it really pales to the east, as you know, that in Melbourne or Queensland. And we're really strapped for good. We really do get just the basics here, which can make it, compared to, say, like the gyms in Middle East, America, or even Britain, there's nothing like available for us. So
the only ones in WA, some of the Gold's gyms have been pretty good. And Chris Pavey set up a fantastic gym, Culture Fitness, in North Perth, and that's worth a visit. In fact, you and I need to go in there and do a review of that gym, because he's put a lot of time and effort into that. So I'd be keen to check out his Culture Fitness. We should give it a shot. He's got
How
a
about
lot of
number
good leg.
5?
Yeah, and
Or is it
so
number 5 before?
yeah, no, we're up to number 5 for me. Hack squats with a full range of motion, but for me, if I do hack squats like that with my knees, I've got to have my feet fairly high up the platform. So I can't do what Tom did with the feet low and going all the way. I just get one go at that, and then I'd be contacting my orthopedic surgeon. So, but yeah, with the feet higher on the platform all the way, hack squats, feet close together. That's a good one if your knees can handle it.
I've seen you on that V squat machine a few times, and that's one I've never really gotten, anything out of. So, but do you like that one as well?
I do, but I don't get the DOMs. I don't get the DOMs the next day. So
Yeah, I don't feel shit
it's
from it. Yeah, personally.
I think my glutes are taken over, and but with all those ones I've mentioned, my knee friendly, and I'm getting all the soreness, especially lunges. Wow, pain
Yeah.
everywhere.
My favorites, my number 1 would be a hack squat, but it's very hard to find a good machine, particularly like I said again in certain regions like ours. But if I could find a great hack squat machine, I think there's nothing better. Apart from that, obviously moving into a leg press, because I've never been able to do actual back squats. But actually, no, I will preface that again with, if I had my front squat harness, because I'm not one of these guys that can balance the bar, especially when you start getting up to 3 plates on a front squat. It's very hard to get to balance that bar on your front, and you're spending more of the time balancing the bar or hoping it doesn't choke you and hit your Adam's apple than actually worrying about the tension on your quads. So with a front squat harness, that front squats is my number 1. Failing that, the hack squat, but having a good hack squat machine, a leg press, because nothing beats, like, I think, the high rep leg presses. After leg press, I think walking lunges, nothing can beat that. Dorian was never a fan of the lunges. He said no self-respecting male should ever be caught doing lunges, apparently.
Well, we'll disagree with that.
The leg extensions, I think, is probably one of those. Everyone used to shit on leg extensions back in the day, sort of saying they would wreck your knees, that they weren't an effective movement. But it's almost like, if you have a good compound exercise like a squat or a leg press, you almost need to pair it up with a leg extension to get that full quad engagement of all 4 heads.
Sean, can I just say something there with leg extension? Sorry to interrupt you, but I've found in the last probably 18 months, and I've got 60-year-old knees here, training in the gym for 40 years. I've been doing leg extensions first in my workout, and it's made a massive difference to my quad training. My knees are perfectly fine, and by the time I get to squats and leg press after that, my knees are good to go. So they reckon it wrecks your knees, but it's the perfect warm up for me. It's a great pre-exhaust. So for people having trouble with their knees, try doing leg extensions first in your workout with peak contractions. It's a great way to start your workout.
It's funny when you talk about training quads and starting exercises, because John Meadows and a few of the others were always very popular on doing hamstrings first, because then you're flushing a lot of the blood to the knee area. And, he was big on the lying leg curl. But I was also going to ask you about, do you like to spread your quad training over 1 or 2 days, or do you put it all in on the one day there?
Yeah, good question. I've probably for a number of years. In fact, it was when I started doing hamstrings on a separate day. So quads and calves one day, and then later in the week, I do hamstrings and calves. But there'd be a little bit of quad and hamstring. So when I do hamstrings, there'd be a little bit of quad work as well as a bit of a top up. But the improvement I got in my hamstrings by doing that was phenomenal. And I had a few young guys, that their hamstrings were nothing, and they split their workouts up and their hamstrings just in 1 year. It was amazing, the difference. So I really like to split that up for sure.
There's a lot of talk also these days about hitting the effective reps in the set, and that's usually the last few reps of any set that are arguably the most productive. So therefore, they're saying these days that you almost want to avoid the higher rep sets, because it accumulates more fatigue by doing higher reps, but also it's harder to hit, like the effective reps at the end. Whereas if you do heavy, lower rep sets, you're almost accumulating the effective reps from the get-go. So, if you're doing a 6-rep leg press or a 6-rep squat, there's a lot of effective reps there. However, I've always found, and this has been borne out, I think, by the history of so many good bodybuilders with awesome legs, is that they've always done really high reps. And I find that when I do a 20-rep leg extension or a 20-rep leg press, it just hits my legs more effectively. My legs get more pumped. Whereas like if it just pushes heavy weight, I don't feel it as much in my legs.
Yeah, that's true. And I've done the same thing. You and I have done it together. And the burn that you get, you can only really get that burn, that intense burn in the muscle, when you're upwards of 15, 20 reps. So I think it's occasionally good to do that. And I still like to do it myself. But I do like to do, on my heavy working set, I must admit, I like to do the 8 to 10. But I don't usually go below 8 on legs.
Did you do breathing squats back in your day where you take a weight that you can do for 10 reps, say if you could do 100 for 10 on the squats, but you do 20 with it? Did you ever do that back in your younger years?
No, not really. No, I was everything was 6 to 8 reps. That's what I read in the magazines. 6 to 8, 6 to 8. So no, I was a bit one-eyed back then, but then I've changed things up a little bit as I got older.
One of the methods that I really do like for leg training that I don't think are utilized enough, I think it's becoming a little bit more popular now, it's becoming more widespread in people talking about it, is the rest pause or the myo reps for doing legs. So you might take your first set relatively close to failure or to failure, but then you rest for say 20 to 30 seconds doing deep breathing, and then you pick up the weight and go again. Or, and then you hit failure and go again as well after another 30-second break. I just find it's a really good way to extend the set and get, like we were talking about, those effective reps.
Yeah, I haven't tried that, but it'd be worth a shot.
Two exercises that I haven't really had much experience on, but I'm wondering if you have, is the sissy machine squats, with that little contraption we see in the gyms where you hook your feet underneath, and it just looks like a suicide act to me. But
yeah, look, I tried to use it. I've tried twice, and I just felt like my kneecap was just going to explode. Both kneecaps were just going to go. And I just couldn't get a vertical spine. So it's something to do with my longer legs and shorter torso. My mechanics do not go well for sissy squats. I remember Platts used to do the sissy squats, but he just had the mechanics.
Yeah, minus the machine though. I mean, like a lot of them are doing it in that machine these days.
I know. I've used that machine. I've screwed myself in.
I can't get the form.
Can't do it.
Another one that I see most popular these days that I also want to start giving a try because there's no axial loading, which makes it, I think, potentially effective. And that's the belt squat machine. Have you tried that?
I've used it. I've used a belt squat machine once in Melbourne at a gym, and I liked it. Again, if you're having trouble with your knees, even your lower back and all that sort of thing, and you can really load it up. So, and you can definitely activate the glutes, the posterior chain, quite well. So I think that's something that is worth trialing. It's just that there's nothing available to me in WA, but I need to give it another crack when I head to Melbourne in the next school holidays for sure.
Yeah, we got one at my gym up here, so I've never given it a try because I was always intimidating because I never knew how to use it and I didn't want to do it wrong.
Yeah,
but,
they're good.
I saw it being used the other day and I had to talk with the guy using it and I sort of thought, I'm going to give that a go next time.
Yeah, you should do,
Yeah. Moving on to our next topic, and he's been the talk of the week as he is. He's the most popular influencer probably these days besides Sam Sulek. He's almost like the anti-Sam Sulek in more ways than one. But that's Mike Israetel, because not only is he really popular with his YouTube content, I think he's very entertaining, extremely intelligent, well-spoken and articulate. Probably one of the better speakers I've actually ever heard on any topic that he speaks about. He never ums or ahs. He never throws in any filler words. I think if there was somebody that I wanted to model myself in speaking ability, just his self-deprecating humor. He's so quick on the mark with his, he could be literally a comedian. But unfortunately, he can't match his eloquence of speech with bodybuilding, which has got himself at odds in a bit of a quandary this week. But I sent you the photos of Mike's competition photos this weekend. What did you think as an experienced judge and bodybuilding connoisseur?
Well, yeah, I was a little bit surprised. I guess he was in a masters competition, so he's 40 years of age, 40 plus. So he's got a lot of muscle. So I had a good look at the pictures.
He just turned 40. I think he's 30. He said he was turning like 39 or something, but
okay. I thought it was
40. Yeah.
I thought he was going for a Masters Pro. I could be wrong about that.
That could be over 35 though. It depends on the federation the federation of the contest.
Actually, you know what? In the US, they do over 35s. That's right. Not so much in Australia. But from the front, he looked okay. The problem with Mike is that he's got short limbs. And for bodybuilding, you don't want long limbs that are too long, but they're very short limbs. He's got quite narrow clavicles, and he's probably, maybe he might have been an endomorphic type, I don't know. So he's sort of got a little bit of a blocky physique, but he has got a lot of muscle. So I will say that from the front, his front double bicep looked pretty good. There wasn't anything at fault there. It's probably the way he struck the pose needs a little bit of work. He put the leg flaring out to the side, which didn't look quite right, but not bad. But then when he turned around from the back, he looked like he was probably a good 4 to 5 weeks out at least. And this is Mr. Fat Loss here, the expert of fat loss. And he still had love handles, loose skin, and the rear lat spread. That's the one that the judges look at. The back double biceps to a degree, but the rear lat spread, if you're not in shape, it really shows. It shows in the glutes and it shows in the lower back, and he was a long way off. And you know, his lats are actually quite good. He's got very thick lats. Like I say, a little bit of a problem with his short arms and narrow clavicles, and he hasn't got that width. And I believe, Sean, that he didn't even make the top 5 in that particular contest.
Yeah, so, and he was really disingenuous with his statement about it as well, because the way he stated it was, yeah, he described himself as like, I'm out of the top 5 in kind of quite Weasley terms, because that sounds like he was almost in the top 5 rather than the shitty showing that he actually put up. And this is where he starts to tie himself in knots, and all of his credentials backfire against him, because, you know, his ego is basically writing checks that his body can't cash at the end of the day. And it just highlights the fact of how much genetics play in the sport, because you can have all the knowledge and all the resources, like we talked about before, at your disposal, but he can't translate it. And every competition that he's shown up for in the past, including this one, he has never been able to put it together, not even vaguely close. And I think it just highlights the absolute lack of credibility in that camp at Renaissance Periodization, because you have like the guys like, I don't know if you know them or not, but like Jared Feather, he's this guy that's aligned with Mike, business partners or whatnot. He's turned IFBB pro because he's got good genetics, and, you know, his other business partners as well. But they should be saying to him as their coach and advisors, or basically talking him off this ledge of reputational suicide, because when you show that kind of detachment from reality in terms of such a shitty physique on stage, it really kind of damages the credibility, because it shows that he has this absolute hubris that he thinks that what he's displaying is worth displaying. But then at the end of the day, he wants to say it was because his tan was off. Now, he's been competing for 10 years and you can't get the fucking tan right. And your team or your advisors, your coach that are looking at you at the contest, they can't tell you that your camp is, your tan is wrong. Like, it totally, you know, it's not your fucking tan. It's your physique, mate. It's just a pathetic excuse at the end of the day.
Look, his tan was a bit light, yeah, but
it was
really, but we talk about structure, so that he hasn't got the structure from the front. Like I say, he's got a lot of muscle, so that's okay. Good muscle bellies, but those short limbs, narrow clavicles, a bit short and stumpy, and then from the back, he just wasn't in condition. Now, you told me apparently that he was eating 3,000 calories, and you know, if it fits in your macros with all sorts of carby treats, which that's not going to get you in shape, especially at 35 plus years old.
They like to humble brag their competition preps by sort of saying, look how many calories I'm eating, and look at all the fun, yummy processed foods that I'm putting down. I'm still achieving amazing fat loss. You know what? Like, you said it yourself in your own podcast, Mike, you can't out-train a shitty diet, and you eating all this crap like Cheerios and Gatorade and these highly processed foods. You should look like shit because you are eating shit. And the thing is with Mike, and the reason why I don't mind coming down hard on this particular guy, despite the fact that I said he's brilliant and he's well-spoken and everything else, but he's so condescending and patronizing to everybody else that he also has a lot of his content videos on, that he loves to expose all this bad technique and what everybody else is doing so incorrectly. But he's like Elaine Norton and a few other influencers that just, you know, like to criticize, but obviously when it comes to him also putting up the goods, you can't do it. It's just gross incompetence, basically. But like, you know, like, look at shit from Greg Doucette, but Greg Doucette, at least at the end of the day, got his pro card and was a fairly decent bodybuilder.
That's right. So I think Mike's, he's out to attract all of the guys that like to have all their goodies and their treats and have a nice, enjoyable diet. But you need to suffer a little bit. You really do. And as you said to me off air, that your calories need to be getting down to that sort of 1,500, 1,200 towards the end. I mean, to dial it in. As long as if your protein is high and you've got a little bit of fat in there, you're not going to lose muscle.
Plus, he's on so many drugs, and this is another one of the controversies surrounding Mike at the moment, because you saw that video as well. It was on another one that we were going to discuss, that Dr. Mike interviewing Dr. Mike, and Mike opened up about the amount of anxiety and psychological problems and the building up inner rage that he has and wanting to commit violence against people, because of the amount of drugs that he's on. And as many people have come out and said that this sport isn't for you, Mike. You need to take your millions and millions of dollars that you've earned from this and parlay that into something else other than standing on stage and trying to get a pro card, because it's not in the works for you. Not this year, not next year, not any year. You're not going to be able to come back at 45 and present a better package than what you're doing now. But it's also funny, like, I want to put this to you as a hypothetical. He competes on stage or whatever at 230 or 240 at 5'5" or 5'6" or whatever he is.
Right.
Now, guys back in the 80s that were his height, like say like Labrada, would he be better off competing at say like 180 or 190 with the proportions and the size the height that he has?
Absolutely. I mean, he could look 10 times better if he dialed that first of all, if he got rid of all that body fat where the love handles are, that in itself is going to bring his waist in. He's got a bit of a thick waist, but it's not too bad. He's got a lot of muscle. Just a scaled down version with a really nice tight waist and some muscles that are actually popping from the back. There's nothing popping there. So he could look a damn sight better for sure. And, get a posing coach too, because his quarter turn was cringeworthy.
That one where he's from the side, where he's leaning at almost like a 45-degree angle. Like, this is like, these guys are supposed to be the world-class Renaissance periodization fucking gurus of enlightenment. Right. But you look like a bunch of absolute amateurs when you put up a package like that.
Yeah, so that was a bit of a shock too. So there's a whole bunch of things you could do. But yeah, he could easily be down to 205, 200, or even 195, and he'd look 1,000% better for sure.
Yeah, and again, it all comes back to the genetic game, because people might argue that if it's your macros or anything else in regards to this kind of eating on a contest prep, there's nothing wrong with it. You look at Ronnie Coleman, he used the chicken and a liter of barbecue sauce and whatever else he was tipping on his food during his contest preps. But then you can also look at someone like Lee Labrada, who does, not Lee Labrada, a Hunter Labrada, who has top tier genetics. But when he made a change to his competition diets, because he was just eating blended up food and mostly protein shakes, when he started to eat actual real good food, his physique changed phenomenally.
Yeah, it did. There was a huge difference, and that was his new coach Ben got him doing that. Said to him, "Listen, you're going to have to start eating your food, and make your stomach work, get those stomach acids firing up and improve your whole gut bacteria and all that sort of thing. Because just swilling down, a blended meal of chicken and rice, that can't be good."
Yeah, so Mike, for as much as I love his entertaining content and the way that he speaks and puts things, he's dug his own grave by trying to be contrarian at the end of the day, because his whole brand has been like, look how I can do it different by not training to failure, not eating clean food, judging my workout effectiveness by pump and soreness, periodization, which actually has no scientific backing behind it. Not that science plays a huge part in this game anyway, but it's just been, it's dug himself into his own grave at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So we'll talk a little bit about contest wrap-ups recently. And a couple of weeks back, maybe 12 days ago, we had the big man in Europe or Portugal, I think.
Yeah, it was Estoril in Portugal, the big man evolution weekend. Good show, that one.
Yeah, do you want to give us a brief rundown of that one?
Well, it was a pretty stacked lineup, to be honest. And the top three ended up being, third was, I think it's Imar Omaragic, who's a Chris Aceto client, and he just keeps improving. He's probably not got the best structure, but Chris has got him in fantastic condition. He was the best conditioned athlete in the show. So he's continued to improve, and he's still got a chance to make the Olympia if he can just notch up a win. But it really was just it was a ding-dong battle between William Bonac, who'd won a previous show this year, and he's already in the Olympia, and then the comeback of Nathan D'Asher. So Nathan D'Asher having a go at William, head-to-head, these two. They haven't been head-to-head a long time. And as it turned out, Nathan proved to be victorious on the day. William looked good. I do believe William Bonac, now at 42 years of age, or however old he is slightly downsized, but he was in really good condition. He's fixed his gyno. He had a little bit of a hernia. That was sorted out. But Nathan D'Asher, after tearing 2 biceps, has come back probably almost the best he's ever looked. I think his waist is getting a little bit bigger, but other than that, his shoulders, pecs, upper back, he's got the high lats and long torso, but he manages that well. And I think he was just too big for William. William's a little bit straight up and down. But a good battle, and I believe Nathan got straight first. So so Nathan has got his ticket to the Olympia. William would be there again, obviously. So it'll be another good battle for them, and they'll be in the second call.
There's some kind of inconsistencies with the judging, because I just noticed with this show, it's reflective of some weird judging decisions going on, because you had Bonac beating Beirut very narrowly a few weeks ago. Then you had Beirut beating Nathan with a perfect score. And now we're having Nathan beating Bonac with the perfect score, even though there's only very small differences in their physique from week to week or show to show. So what can you say to like the consistency of the judging of what's transpired recently?
I think some of the judging panels, they might have a focus on the aesthetics a little bit more, and then condition. These guys, their condition can change in hours. So honestly, it's hard for us to look at with video. You need to be there. You need to be right there, up close, to see the true condition of the athlete. So the condition can change. Beirut was in incredible condition when he did that. When he had that win against Nathan, and Nathan wasn't quite on there, but Nathan improved again to beat Williams. So it's been a great pro league series of shows, because there's been so many tight battles for first and second with 1-point decisions, and then all these different guys getting a ticket to the Olympia. So the Olympia lineup's going to be it's going to be a great battle, and the judge is going to have hard work with second, third, and fourth call outs, because they're all good athletes, but it's going to be very difficult to judge. But I think it's sometimes the aesthetics on the day, like with Beirut, can sort of win the judges over, at providing conditions on point. So
I checked out the Vancouver show because you sent me some pictures of it, and remember I was very scathing in my replies to you. What the fuck is this shit? And in the pictures that you sent, I didn't like the looks of what I was seeing. But then I jumped on and had a look at the videos, and I was much more impressed when I saw the moving videos in action, particularly with John Jewett, because he looked very distorted and ugly in that picture. I don't know if it was just the resolution or what, but I was impressed with John. He almost kind of looked a little bit Hunter Labrada-ish in his shape and in his improvements. But were there any standouts from that show that you thought bears commentary?
Yeah, look, it's very interesting. John, look, kudos to John Jewett. You've got to remember, Sean, he's another one that was in the 212, and he's added quite a bit of size. Now, he's added size with maintaining a pretty good waistline, and so he's just slapped on muscle everywhere. And he's a bit of a guru with posing and with diet and PED use. So if people want good information, he puts up some great information actually on his YouTube channel, and particularly on Instagram. So
I subscribe to his course, that he has that high.
That's right.
High price, but it's good information.
Oh, he's a guru, and he's his own probably best client. So kudos to John. He had a great win. Tim Budesheim from Germany is just doing really, really well this year. He's in great condition every show. He just hasn't got good structure, but he's a marvel of muscle, and he's really grainy, gnarly, dense, and I like those physiques, but unfortunately, against the aesthetics, John was more aesthetic, and against the aesthetics of someone like Nathan D'Asher with a smaller waist, or Beirut, he's going to struggle. But I hope that Tim can get a win. He's very, very close now with that second in Vancouver. So it's just its waist is nearly the same width as his shoulders. That's his problem. But he's got a lot of muscle, and I tell you what, he poses well. Robin Strand from Canada was third, and not a great big fan of his physique, but it was Vancouver, isn't it?
Biceps before or something apparently, and that was a real standout where they didn't look good on stage apparently.
Yeah, so there's that, but I wasn't not a particular fan of his physique. He looks okay. The show was in Vancouver, and he's from Canada, so I don't know. Hopefully, there was no favouritism there. But yeah, he looked okay. There was a couple of other guys that I thought might have jumped into third, but the first and second battle once again, another good battle. So and then Sean, we've got the Chicago Pro lineup this weekend, and it's pretty.
Has it already
stacked,
happened?
actually.
Because I thought I caught like a glimpse of it happening live while we were going to there. So I'm not sure if it's already. Yeah.
Some of these shows are held on. Some of the shows are held on Sunday.
Give us your 1 and 2.
Well, there's so many. There's 19 guys. There's this character Muhammad Fodar. I don't know much about him, but he's got the Phil Heath type sort of muscle bellies, that balloon might muscle, but he's got a really small waist. We need to look out for him, Muhammad. I think he's good. I think he might win. Could be a bit of a dark horse. And then you've got people like Phil Clahar, who's, his mid-40s. He's won a pro show before. He's coming back. But if Phil's not in great shape, that can hurt him. But he's got a really wide back, fantastic structure, super wide, very aesthetically pleasing physique, and a marvel for, like I say, for 45 years of age, or how old. I think he might even be older than that. And the other guy that we'd love to see do well, and especially me, who I love the freaks, is Hassan Mustafa, who I believe is out of Egypt. He just, if someone could dial him in. When he was with Chris Aceto, Chris dialed him in, and he looked good. And he had, but then I don't know, they're falling out, and I don't know who's coaching him now. But Hassan, if he can dial it in, particularly from the rear, he could win the show. He really could. But it's sometimes it's like with Samson from the back as well. You just want to see them get in that condition. But it's going to be a good one. And shout out to Sam Pearce from Australia. He's competing in the Chicago Pro. He did a show earlier in the year, and he's backing it up here. He'll be extremely conditioned, and I'm hoping he can make top 5 or 6 here, because he's really on his way back after being away for a period of time. Yeah.
Well, last week you gave us your top 5 picks for the best posing routines of all time, so I thought I'd weigh in with mine really quickly just to end the show off with. But number 5, I'm going with Muhammad Makawi's. I think it was his 1983 Olympia, but he was known as the Magic Egyptian. He was 5'3". I think he was only about 155 pounds. But if you were to show someone, in order to make them fall in love with bodybuilding, a classic posing routine, I would go with none other than something like this. I know that Muhammad studied ballet, and you could just see that in the precision of his movements. He even beat the great Lee Haney at one time. He's just got this radiant joy of expression in his face as he's posing. And he also studied, I think, under Vince Girondo too. So you can really see the Vince's influence coming through in this posing routine. He posed to the Great Gate of Kiev, and it's just mesmerizing, slow, deliberate, holding the poses. It's almost like a 6-minute long routine. But one of the things that I particularly liked with some of the poses that you don't see much of these days, except for Big Ramy pulling it off one time, is the hands behind the back most muscular. I've seen Arnold do it in a photo, but he did it really well, and Big Ramy as well. So it must be an Egyptian thing. Number 4, I've got Bob Paris for his 1988 Olympia posing routine as Tracy Chapman's Baby Can I Hold You. Now, 1988 was a standout year for posing routines. I could have picked a number of guys from this. Like, remember Phil Hill's Phantom of the Opera routine came from this one as well. Yeah. They had Lee Haney posing to Rocky IV. There was great posing routine from Lee Labrada. But I just thought that Bob's posing from this one was so original in its choreography. It really highlighted his perfect I thought from this one, basically, Greek sculpture come to life. And stick your pod stop up your ass, because this is bodybuilding. And also I thought the 88 Olympia was the crossroads of bodybuilding. And from here, I think it chose the wrong path, but that's just my personal opinion. The next one at number 3, I've got Dorian Yates, 1996. Selector pose. It had that opening Terminator vibe, but no one masters the art of power posing. The version. A lot of people like 92, but I think it's 93. But this is his most streamlined version. Probably my favorite version of Yates. The camera work was also amazing for that
For
year
back
really
lap
showed
press,
the Olympia.
please
So
press 3.
I love how it picked up the audience's reaction as well. Contrast with flash bombs, kind of like the audience for long distances, things like that. But
For
I
random
think that
access, please
one
press
aspect
the
of
star
Dorian
key.
is that he never left any aspect of his professionalism to chance. So he used the free posing round to make a statement every time he stood on the Olympus stage. And I wrote that his routines entertaining spots on this list. So routines always aim to hit like an emotional crescendo.
Don't you think the way when he twisted and did the side poses, his side lat poses, just to sort of hide that waist, like Arnold did, because Arnold had a thick waist, but Dorian really did that well. Some of those side lat poses were brilliant.
No posing coach, no guru, no science or apps to hone him in. Just good old fashioned photography and hard work and meticulous attention to detail. So yeah, Dorian, my number 3. Number 2, of course you're going to hate me for this one, but it's 1994's version of Sean Ray, because I think that was probably his one chance to clinch the Olympia, and even Lonnie Tepper agrees with me on that one. But the 94 Olympia was the very first Olympia tape that I'd ever bought. And when I saw Sean's routine, it's kind of almost like a sentimental favourite, but Dorian always mixed it up with different songs and different tracks and made it original and relevant. Sean always kind of like did the same posing routine, and a lot of the time he used the same music. In this case, it was Jennifer Holiday's "I'm Telling You I'm Not Gone," and so that's just a sentimental favourite for me. But I think it was just such a fantastic performance that he should have been able to capture the Olympia that year based on that performance alone.
Sean's posing was majestic. That's the word that comes to my mind. It was slow. And like I say, it was just the one song, but at least you could really appreciate his physique. And there was an element of dance ballet in it. And so, as much as I, a little bit off put with some of Sean's comments or whatever, his physique spoke for itself, and he did pose beautifully. So majestic for me, for sure. Good choice.
Yeah, and in terms of my number 1, again, majestic. And if you're going to hashtag bodybuilding and show anybody what bodybuilding is all about, show you this routine, and that is Leopold's 1991 Infinite Bullfighter routine. I think it's the best words you could use to describe it as poetry in motion, and he elevated, I think, this one routine. Flawless choreography. He showed all poses and sides of his physiques, because what his statement was with this routine is that I've got no weaknesses. I'm not hiding anything. He used epic music perfectly in sync with the entire time. The time, the transitions. It was just complexity and creativity. And again, they were trying to get bodybuilding into the Olympics at this time. And I think if you had showed the Olympic Committee this routine, they would have to seriously consider pure mastery. And another thing I also got from when I was watching recently is that it's not a drop of sweat So it just shows you again what consummate professional Lee Labrada was back in the day. And he would have practiced that routine until we had it down so where he wasn't even sweating and he was smiling throughout. And he again just mastered it.
Yeah, look, that's a fantastic choice. Well done. For sure. But don't you think that Lee was a bit like Muhammad Makawi, Frank Zane, and of course his nickname Mass with class? It was just there was all of those wrapped up, wasn't it? He had the mass, but it was definitely like Makawi, and it struck the Zane pose. Some of those Zane poses, just like Frank did, just would snap into the pose and hold it there, and was mesmerizing, and everything would pop. But by geez, did he have polish? Like I say,
the timing and the transitions, everything. There was not one thing you could fall with that particular routine. So
perfect tan. He had the little moustache there. The good-looking guy, good haircut.
Yeah, because they always had the interviews before they went on stage. Do you notice when they did the Olympia videos, they would preface every routine with that little talking head interview.
Great athletes here today, but I feel that I have the potential to do it, and I think that I will do it.
The skin, the hair, the moustache, everything, the eyes.
He must have been minimalist in his use of whatever, because he didn't have any weird jawlines or extra things that have grown on his body that shouldn't be growing. He just looked pretty damn good to me. He looked healthy, didn't he?
Healthy, 100%. And then, we've lost it, by the way. But Hunter, his son, I don't know what Lee thinks, because Lee was always very ultra critical of the mass monsters and the movement, that the way that bodybuilding was progressing. But I suppose, Lee, just being a great father, is probably supportive of the direction that Hunter wants to go in. But Hunter looks like Lee's older uncle.
Yeah,
I'm sad to say,
I can't see the family resemblance that much, other than the fact that they both got great muscle bellies. But I don't see the family resemblance that much. So it must be
not even in
maybe Lee's, maybe on his mother's side, because the mother was taller than the mother was taller than his father, Lee. So I don't know.
Yeah. But anyway, that was my top 5. So that was a great discussion. I think we could probably add as many different routines and bodybuilders to that list. So maybe we could talk, if we have a guest on in the future, who their top 5 was. We want to try to get Faz Lifts on pretty soon, and he's pretty keen to come on. Maybe even Xavier from Desktop Bodybuilding, and he could chip in with his 5, because these routines are just always great to discuss, and we could make the list endless, I think, at the end of the day.
And we can learn from them. That's the other thing.
Yeah, exactly. We found this interesting pic that was circulating social media of Trump. Now, I don't know if it's real, but he seems to be hitting the Ziz pose in this picture. And I just thought it was worth noting, because these episodes, as much as anything, are like a timeline of the events that come across in bodybuilding as we see them. So I thought it was an interesting little insertion for this week's commentary.
Yeah, and the funny thing was, the security guard that's in front of Trump in that picture, I'm just looking at it now on my computer. She was obviously doing a good job. She's got the Kevlar bulletproof vest on and diving in front of Donald. But by geez, she's probably about 6 inches shorter than him. So I'm not sure that the height of that particular security guard was taken into account as part of the job criteria. You'd want to be a 6 foot something if you're going to shroud the potential president from bullets that are coming in from a roof 300 meters away.
Yeah, don't even get me started, mate. Like, I was going to put a rant on social media about this, and I sort of thought, maybe I probably should just stay quiet about it. But this whole discussion about the diversity, hires that they have, the person that was in charge of the Secret Service, of course, is a female, and she wants to have that target of having 30% representation of females in the Secret Service. And we saw what an absolute shit show that was this week with the Trump assassination attempt, and how all those women on board were total fucking failures, and it was such a farce at the end of the day. But
the photo is a cracker, isn't it? It really is. So
So if it's not real, just let us know there in the comments. But it looks pretty impressive anyway. And if there's anyone to pull off his move, it would be Trump after that. But it shows the balls of the guy. Like, you can love him or hate him, but the impressive courage of that guy to stand up there and just make a statement in terms of his fist pump and saying fight, when most people would have been cowering and whimpering on the floor after that. But
I think he was on the golf course the next day, I believe. Which
I think he's milking it for the mileage, but good on him.
Which I thought, wow, that's not bad for 78.
Yeah. No, he's not exactly the paragon of health and fitness himself, is he? But what you lack in body, he makes up for in spirit and drive. So I think the Democrats might as well wind up this whole election process, because they don't have a fucking chance, and snowflake's chance in hell in gaining office.
Yeah, I know they're going to be struggling. That's for sure.
A couple of discussion points I thought we could just end up on as well is Dorian did release another podcast interview this week. He seems to be trying to do the Mike Israel and reach saturation point with all the interviews, but he always manages to put out something new, old good old Dorian. And it was funny, he was presented with the question of who he who his favorite bodybuilder of the current era is. And I expected him to go with somebody from the open era because he was always favorite of the mass monsters. But he said that his favorite bodybuilder these days is none other than Chris Bumstead. And you gave some great reasons why. Because we talked a few weeks ago about how bodybuilders generally like those that resemble themselves in a way. And you gave a few striking reasons why Dorian likes Chris in this regard.
Well, look, there's a number of reasons. First of all, Chris has got that graininess, gnarliness, that incredible condition that Dorian had. Chris has got the shortish torso like Dorian had. He's got the longer legs. It's a very, very similar structure. The biceps are mid-attached, a bit like Dorian's. From the back, very similar. I mean, Dorian's back was probably bigger, but really, Chris is just a scaled-down version. This is why we'd all love to see Chris with 20 or 30 pounds more muscle, because he could potentially look like Dorian or better, to be honest. Their front lat spreads are very, very similar. I think Chris's waist is probably a little bit smaller, but then Dorian, in 92 and 93, his waist wasn't that bad. He was pretty streamlined back then. People criticise him, but he had a pretty symmetrical physique and with good proportions in the early 90s. But a very similar physique, and you've hit you've hit the nail on the head there, Sean, when you say that bodybuilders tend to sort of migrate to someone that looked like them in terms of a favourite, and in terms of mass and symmetry, they'll if they had more mass, they like the freaks, and if they had more symmetry, they'll go with obviously those that look a bit more aesthetic. But it was interesting because Dorian, being a bit of a mass guy, went for Chris, but then Chris has got mass, and he's like Lee Labrada. He's mass with class, as they say. So, very interesting. And I think you've got a photo there that you can sort of put up, and you can see
I'll put a photo up there now so people can see the resemblance, especially with the lat spread, because you were the one that brought to light the iconic lat spread of Chris Bumstead, who you consider was one of the best lat spreads of all time. So there you go. He does look very Dorian-esque. And I was talking to Charmaine about it, and she fully agreed with you. But she said, oh, yeah, but Chris Bumstead does this pose where he puts his arm over behind his head and does like a single bicep. And I pulled up the exact same pose that Dorian used to do.
That's right.
And again, so there's so many striking resemblance, and even the poses that each man employs, highlighting their strengths. And
also, don't forget the teapot front lat spread, where you've got the one arm up and the one arm on the hip. Honestly, that's Chris's best pose.
Oh, wow. That's Dorian's signature pose, yeah.
Yeah, and Dorian would just tilt his head to the side. But honestly, they both hit that pose beautifully. So it's not a surprise, but it popped out of nowhere there. But it was surprising that Dorian said it. But it doesn't now. Now that he said it, doesn't surprise me. So it was a good one to talk about.
Yeah, Dorian was again very critical of the bodybuilders, as he is in these interviews that he does. And he said that he went to the Olympia, I think it was last year or the year before, and he said he only stayed for 10 minutes and watched 10 minutes of it because he was just overly bored with what it was. But he did challenge Chris. He said that Chris should step up and definitely give it a go, because if he wanted to cement his legacy as one of the greatest of all time, that's the open division is where it's at for the big boys at the end of the day. But I think Chris, he's probably going to sail off to the sunset with his reputation, legacy, and health intact, hopefully. He's 29 now, baby, and other obligations.
Yeah, that's right. So he's done really well, but we'd all love to see it. So it'd be great just for one or two seasons to see him have a crack at the Open, but then he might just want to finish on top. It's hard to know, isn't it?
Yeah. I bet you Flex Lewis regrets his missed opportunity there in the Open, because as the 212s are showing us that they are dominating that class at the moment, and he could have been the one to also have his name imprinted in history. But now these days it's Flex Wheeler. Oh yeah, everyone's forgotten who Flex Lewis is, But
I'm with you on that. When Flex Lewis said he was coming to the Open, because I'm a big fan of Flex Lewis. I think he had a fantastic physique. Some Olympians were better than others, but what about his physique? Like 3 or 4 weeks out, some of those crazy pictures he put up with Neil Hill, and it was absolutely sensational to look at. And then you think to yourself, wouldn't it be good to see him in the Open? Then he was going to, and then he pulled the pin on it, and it really took the wind out of my sails. I was a bit disappointed there, but you're right. I mean, look at Derek, look at Hardy and others, William Bonac, and now John Dewart's come up. I'm not saying that John Dewart could be top 5, but these guys, they let themselves grow, and They look
I think if
fantastic.
Keon Pearson ever gets it together enough for the Open, that's going to be another
I know. Yeah.
hellish guy to contend with for the bigger guys.
Yeah, good example.
One thing that we'll just finish off with as well is the photos of Andrew Jacked, who you said is looking very jacked at the moment, and he's making a run for the Texas Pro. I was quite amazed at, because I don't really see too much of this guy, but his proportions were pretty wild. Did you want to talk about those photos just before we finish out the show?
Yeah, he's put on some size. Andrew's 40-odd years old. He's under the guidance of Chris Acedo, and Nigerian, like, Samson Dowder. What a physique. Because he's so tall, he's about 6'1", he needed to fill out a little bit. So he's done that. The shoulders, the pecs, even the flaring quads, upper back, he needed to get a bit more on his back. But again, being Nigerian, that sealskin from the back, it's a condition thing. I believe he finished fifth. I think he was fifth or sixth at the Olympia last year. So he did well, but he's got to he's got to try and, thin out that skin on the back. And if he can do that with the added size, believe me, don't be surprised if Andrew Chinadu, I think is his real name, Andrew Jacked, sneaks into the top 3 or 4 this year. In fact, a lot of the other pros, they will say that when they see this guy backstage, they're mind blown what they see. They go, my God, what the hell is that? They just can't believe.
His arms don't even look real in the picture that you've sent me.
No, he's like a cartoon character with aesthetics.
Those shoulders are bigger than his head.
Yeah, so he's going to have to be careful there a little bit, because they're starting to look like, they're starting to look a little bit sort of jimmied up. I don't know that they're jimmied up, but it's probably just where he's pinning, I'd say. But that'll come down a little bit when he diets. But wow, some added size. He's created some interest, that's for sure. So look out for Andrew Chinadu, Andrew Jacked, and he's definitely, like, as you say, he's looking more jacked than ever. So it's going to be a good Olympia.
And especially under the guidance of Aceto, because I doubt he's got him under the Mike Israel, protein
Cheerios.
shake and baby food and Cheerios with Gatorade diet. So hopefully Andrew can dial it in and make the Olympia more interesting, because, I guess it is, now that I'm starting to turn my focus on it, becoming a little bit more interesting. I'm not fully in favor of the physiques and on board with it, but I'm getting to know the characters a little bit better, and it is heating up to be a pretty good Olympia if everyone stays uninjured. And, I think because one of the guys is already out, that's Chisel.
Oh, yes, he's out. Yep.
He's out for sure.
He's had some shoulder issues.
I doubt he'll be the last one to go before the Olympia actually happens this year. So it'll be interesting.
This is year few, but it's going to be a good battle. It's going to be hard for the judges. They've got a tough job.
Yeah, and we'll preview our picks for the Olympia as time progresses. I like to get kind of, release them as we get a little bit closer. But again, it's been a great chat with you again, sir. And like I say, every week, I love doing these. There's always something interesting to talk about week to week, and we dig into the topics quite thoroughly. So I'll talk to you again soon. Yeah,
good on you, Sean. Love being on Carved Out of Stone, and we'll see you next week.
Hopefully we don't get this one demonetized, mate. And I hope we're still here next week, because we're skirting the edges of edges of danger in terms of getting this channel struck off totally.
Well, I hope not, because I'm having some fun with you. So keep up the good work.
Yeah, you too, mate. Talk to you soon. Bye.